Yes, the JK is still in the studio. If you remember last video, we showed you these really cool JW speak lights. Well, this time around, we're gonna be installing a winch because all Jeeps need a winch. I mean, how else are you gonna pull your way out of the mall parking lot? Now, for our winch, we chose a Warn Evo VR 10,000 pound winch with a synthetic rope. And we need something to mount it to, so we have a Warn Elite Stubby front winch bumper. But before we can install any of this, we need to get rid of that wimpy plastic front bumper. All right, now JK bumpers are really easy to pull off. We've got 4 nuts on each frame rail. There's 2 on the outside flange, 2 on the inside flange. They take an 18mm socket, spin them off, the bumper comes right out. If you've got fog lights, make sure you unplug those first. All right, now for this trim piece, we've got the little push style clips in there, like you have for your grill. From the factory, they're those screwy little Phillips heads that go in there. Just drill those buggers and get them out of the way. And that's done. I like how Warn uses really heavy duty cardboard for their boxes. And then they wrap their bumpers with this cloth. That helps them get to you nice and scratch free. But it doesn't look like the hardware box came through scratch-free. There's the most important part, the destructions. And we've got these anti-nod brackets. You've got to hold this little locking nut up inside. Then it takes this big washer and a big bolt. And you kind of got to play finger Tetris to get everything to line up. Once you get it lined up, make sure you get your fog light wiring harness out of the way. Now, one of the things I want to point out, this is an early model Jeep. This is a 2011. It has that 3.8 in it. Now, if you have a 3.6, you're going to have a vacuum pump right in this area, and that needs to be relocated. Warn does include the relocation bracket, and it's going to mount right behind these anti-nod brackets, and your pump's going to mount right back here. Now we've got the carriage bolts. They're going to come right in on the back side, and on goes our bolt retainers.
Now we found that using a deep well socket about the same diameter of the retainer works like a charm. Support the carriage bolt from the back side and then push the retainer down over the bolt. Lift the bumper up to the frame horns and then slide it into place. And then we're going to add some blue Loctite to the bolts and install the nuts. Now, we don't want to tighten them all the way down at this time, just leave everything a little loose. Then you're going to align the anti-nod plates up with the winch plate and install that hardened. Now, these anti-nod plates are going to help keep that bumper from tipping or nodding down under heavy winch pulls. And then once you have all that mounting hardware installed, now you can tighten everything down according to the Warn spec.
Just like the bumper, our winch hardware also gets blue Loctite. I mean, we're building an off-road vehicle. Why wouldn't you use blue Loctite on everything, red Loctite where it's really needed? Before we drop the winch in, we want to put our little nuts down in the feet. And one of the tricks we use to keep them from moving around on us is we put just a dab of silicone on them. And we can slide it right in. That'll keep them from moving around, falling out, especially if for some reason we have to remove the winch. All right, we're gonna set our winch down. And we wanna make sure we get our rope through the front.
Add some Loctite to the bolts and run them up through the bottom of the bumper.
One of the things when you're putting your hook in, you want to make sure that your cotter pin goes on the back side of the hook. You don't want it hanging out the front here.
With the winch and bumper mounted securely, route the wires up to the battery. You want to make sure that you install the red cable to the positive terminal first, and then the black cable to the negative terminal last. Once that's done, you can plug in the remote and then give it a test, both out and then back in. For the winch, we're using a Warn Evo VR10S. The VR has a smaller frame than the Xeons, and it's going to drop right between the frame rails with no trimming. Now moving on to the rear, the OE bumper has 4 mounting bolts on each side that support brackets, 2 into the bumper and then 2 into the frame. Then there's 2 more brackets going straight out the back with a bolt each going into the bumper and 1 each going into the frame. For the rear bumper, of course we went with the matching Warn Elite Series rear bumper. It gives coverage out to the corners, and it features an optional swing-away tire carrier that can be added during the initial install or could be added later down the road. Now we're not installing one this go around, but it is nice to know that we can add one later. Now once that rear bumper is out of the way, we need to remove the 2 rear body mount bolts to be able to install the Warn mounting bracket bolts through the factory holes on the inside of the frame. Now removing body bolts can be a little nerve-wracking. We found it's best to start out by tightening them just a little bit and then reverse and start loosening them. Once you get a turn or 2 out, reverse the ratchet and run them back in a little bit and then reverse again and continue to work them out.
We've got our good friend, the blue Loctite. And then we have our frame crush sleeve. And that's gonna go in right where that body mount that we pulled out. Now you do have 2 spot welds on either side. You wanna make sure that those are horizontal. And now we can take our right-hand side bracket. Then we want to use our thick washer.
Once your side bolts are in place, install the bolts up through the bottom of the brackets into the frame. Now, not all JKs have the extra holes in the bottom of the frame. If yours doesn't, you'll need to drill the holes. Ours had one side drilled, but not the other. Now, if you've got to drill the frame, make sure you add a little paint to any exposed metal edges. When installing the lower bolts, you're going to need to fish in the flat and split washers down inside that frame rail and onto the bolts. We used a bolt magnet to fish them in, then you can install that nut and stick hardware. And once you've got both side brackets loosely bolted in, we're going to use a tape measure to make sure that they're in the same spot left to right, and then we're going to tighten them up securely. We're going to swab on some blue Loctite, install the bumper, then the nuts, and then tighten it all down. These Warn Elite bumpers, they have a really nice, clean, utilitarian profile to them. They're laser cut and CNC formed, then welded and powder coated. And the cool thing is, it's all done right here in the USA. Now the Stubby Elite bumper, that's the most sleek out of their front bumpers, and you can add an optional hoop up top and a bumper skid plate on the bottom if you so desire. It'll accept up to a 12,000-pound winch and has 2 beefy shackle mounting tabs on the face. It also features 2 recessed jacking points for lifting with a high lift jack, and that's something I'm a huge fan of. I really wish more bumper and slider manufacturers would include those in their products.
So there you have it, a few hours work both front and rear, and we've got those Warn Elite Series bumpers installed, including that 10,000-pound Evo winch. And if you notice somewhere in there, this thing also grew a set of 35s, the Patagonia MTs, and it's now ready for its first trail. So if you're looking for a set of bumpers for your Jeep, well, we encourage you to take a closer look at the Warn Elite Series bumpers. You'll find links down in the description box below. They're made right here in the USA, and we've got them at Northridge 4x4. Thanks for watching today. We'll see you again soon.